Simple things like saying no or waiting just a little bit longer to move forward with a decision might not seem that important. But, as some businesses found out the hard way, making the wrong decision or taking too long to make one can have expensive consequences. Some of the decisions on this list resulted in losses of billions of dollars and even put companies out of business. I'm Jake, the Voice Pa, and these are 10 of the worst business decisions ever made. If you're a child of the 80s and 90s, you'll have fond memories of the Be Kind, Rewind stickers that adorn the VHS tapes in Blockbuster movie rental shops. The beginning of the end for Blockbuster came when CEO John Antioch declined a partnership with a little startup company called Netflix. The company offered to run Blockbuster's online brand if they would promote Netflix in their stores. Uncomfortable with handling over so much power of their brand, they declined Netflix's offer. The popularity of video streaming and the fact that the company was making most of their money from late fees led to the eventual bankruptcy of the company in 2010, while Netflix brings in more than $6 billion a year with no signs of stopping. If you learn anything from history, it should be that sometimes even smart people make ignorant decisions. The story goes that Alexander Graham Bell offered to sell the patent for the telephone to Western Union for $100,000 in the late 1800s. Believing the invention would never take off, they said no. As telephones became more popular, Western Union realized the error of their ways and tried to produce a phone. Bell sued for patent infringement and won. Western Union lost many of their subscribers and lost nearly all of the money they had invested into their telephones. You may have heard of a boy wizard named Harry Potter and his friends Hermione and Ron. But did you know 12 companies turned down the novel? J.K. Rowling's publisher warned her to get a job because her book wasn't going to be successful. Luckily, he was wrong. Book sales alone totaled over $7.7 billion. And between the books, movies, and merchandising, the franchise has earned more than $27 billion. At least one of the publishers that declined the novel has since closed their doors. A merger worth some $350 billion sounds like a great idea on paper, but for Time Warner and AOL, two of the biggest moguls in business history, this proved not to be the case. Just months after the deal went through, dot-com stocks dropped drastically. This resulted in a $99 billion write-off in losses for AOL. A steady decline in AOL subscriptions didn't help matters. Ted Turner resigned as vice chairman of the AOL board of directors following the disastrous business acquisition, effectively ending his business career in disgrace. For 97 years, Firestone Tire worked side by side with Ford, providing tires for several of their vehicles, including the Ford Explorer. In the early 2000s, the National Highway Traffic Administration began investigating claims that the tire's threads were separating. If a vehicle's tire separated at full speed, it would result in vehicles becoming totaled as they violently flipped over while driving. Reports indicate approximately 170 people died, at least in part because of the flaw. Firestone initially recalled some tires, but refused to order a massive recall and denied fault until months later when Congress moved forward with hearings investigating the accidents. Investigations tracked the faulty wires back to a plant in Illinois, which later closed. The cost of the fiasco totaled $3 billion, and Ford and Firestone eventually severed their partnership. One of the most seemingly innocent business decisions made George Lucas massively rich. Following a huge success with his film American Graffiti, executives at Fox offered to pay Lucas $500,000 to direct Star Wars, despite Fox's belief that the film wouldn't be very successful. Instead, Lucas asked Fox to pay him $150,000 for his time and grant him exclusive merchandising rights and rights to any Star Wars sequels. Fox happily signed on the dotted line. Fast forward 40 years later, and Lucas is now one of the richest men in the world. In fact, the merchandising alone has raked in $12 billion, and the sequels made a cool $3.5 billion in box office sales. Lucas eventually sold the franchise to Disney for $4 billion. What may have been a bad business move on Fox's end resulted in a massive windfall for Lucas. If one person had said yes instead of no, you could be listening to your music on an Atari pod. Tech mogul Steve Jobs once worked at Atari as an engineer, and while he was there, he offered to sell Atari his Apple computer for $50,000. But founder and CEO of Atari, Nolan Bushnell, decided he wasn't interested. While the Apple Corporation is now worth $1 trillion, Bushnell says he has no regrets. He believes that his decision to turn down the computer may have helped Steve Jobs find the right group to make his company successful. Charles Darwin may have been talking to Kodak when he said, "It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, it is the one that is most adaptable to change." Once the leader in film and cameras, Kodak tried to hop on board the digital train a little too late. While a Kodak employee invented the first digital camera, it was huge, and it was very impractical to use, so Kodak put it on the back burner. It was bad enough that Kodak's eventual attempts at digital cameras didn't go well. Worse, they entirely missed the transition to mobile phone cameras. Kodak filed for bankruptcy in 2012 and announced they would stop making traditional cameras and focus on digital marketing. Perhaps one of the most recent business debacles, this PR nightmare cost NBC north of $40 million. Jay Leno started hosting The Tonight Show in 1992. Conan O'Brien hosted NBC's late-night show starting in 1993. Because both shows had high ratings and Leno's contract was almost up, NBC told Conan he would be taking over The Tonight Show when Leno's contract ended in 2009. O'Brien took over the show, and the network offered Leno his own show at primetime. Viewership numbers for both programs were shoddy, and executives panicked, opting to bump Leno back to his original time slot and shoving O'Brien back to the midnight hour. O'Brien refused the changes, claiming the network was trying to kill The Tonight Show, and NBC had to fork out $45 million to settle the issue. Conan moved to TBS, and Leno resumed his post on The Tonight Show. Unlike some of the other business blunders on this list, RCA took too many risks by diversifying too much. Attempting to take in a bigger share of the consumer market, they purchased an odd array of companies including Random House, Hertz, and Banquet. Their inability to produce on one area destroyed this electronics mogul. GE eventually purchased RCA. Thomson Electronics eventually purchased the RCA name from GE. For more top lists just like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Don't forget to check out our other top lists. Thank you very much for watching, and thanks for learning.